Hello. Thank you all for joining us in this UNWDF Data Forum webinar series. My name is Masha Hidayati, and I work in the United Nations Office of Information and Communications Technology. I will be moderating today's event. For those of you who are new to these webinar series, I thought that it could be useful to share some brief background for context. This webinar series is a virtual extension of the UN World Data Forum that aims to intensify cooperation and dialogue with various professional groups such as information technology specialists, geospatial information managers, data scientists, users, as well as civil society stakeholders. In today's webinar, we will look at how to use mobile technologies to address data gaps. So why should we care about new forms of data collection and analysis, such as mobile data? The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a unique opportunity for the international community to address the world's most important challenges and opportunities in the development space. So to achieve these goals and to leave no one behind, you need up-to-date and timely data to measure progress and make decisions to improve people's lives. The problem we're facing across the world is that we continue to see significant gaps in existing data, and too many people are missing from the numbers. As the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed recently said in the context of SDGs, the exclusion of people from data is one of the most fundamental challenges we face. So how can we address our data gaps? In today's webinar, through real-world use cases, our speakers will help us understand how new technologies and non-traditional data sources, such as mobile positioning data, can be used to develop innovative solutions to help fill voids in the SDG data landscape. These speakers will also touch upon governance and privacy concerns in the use of mobile positioning data and how trust and quality can be ensured. The topic of mobile data is interesting because of the potential insights we can unearth with such big data. The mobile phones that we are all carrying can collect very granular data about our unique communication and mobility patterns. As such, they've become very powerful sensors for understanding how people and societies behave. As Professor Esteban Moro Eguido, a visiting professor at the MIT Media Lab, stated, with mobile phone data, we are now able to understand human and societal behaviors on a spatial, temporal, and societal level that is unprecedented. And while not every single person on Earth has a mobile phone, we know that the numbers of mobile users are strikingly high. In its 2018 report measuring the information society, the International Telecommunication Union showed that the average mobile subscription rate was 107 per 100 inhabitants worldwide, and that almost every person in the world now lives within reach of a mobile cellular signal. Therefore, it's clear that as a result of growing mobile phone use across the world, we're creating a global data gold mine, and this mobile data that we are producing is constantly growing. So before we begin with the presentation, I would like to thank today's speakers as well as everyone who's tuned in from across the world to join this webinar. We've received a very large number of interesting questions that have helped shape the conversation today. We've picked a few that the panelists will address. Please feel free to use the chat window to send questions throughout the session and to have discussions with other participants who are joining us today. The panelists will respond to some of the questions being raised in the chat window during the second half of the webinar. To all participants, we ask that you please keep your microphones muted at all times. Thank you. So now we will start going to the speakers. So I'd like to begin by introducing Sim Esco, who is the head of sales and marketing at Positium. Positium has been analyzing big data from mobile network operators for 10 years, working initially with the government in Estonia and has now expanded its work for governments of various countries globally. STEAM mainly works with large public sector institutions across Asia, Africa, and South America to leverage location data from mobile networks. Tim, over to you.
So much. What a good introduction. Thank you, and hello from my side. Hello from Estonia. And you might think that Estonia is a very different country. We have snow right now, and most of you are sitting in a tropical climate, but the data itself that we have from mobile operators, it's basically the same all across the world. And maybe I can convey some of that on what we've done in Estonia and other countries, and how we can use that to your benefit in your country as well. And so my topic is mobility. We've done a lot of projects in Positium over these 10 years in different countries, but I'll focus on mobility for now. And I'll tie into how it relates to official statistics and SDGs. Okay, so Paul, will you do the honors? So to start off, Positium is a spin-off company of the University of Tartu, actually. So a professor and an engineer and an architect came together and decided that there should be a better way to measure mobility than how it's done, how it was done back then. And in many countries, it's still the same. Where you see this picture where we actually went on the side of the road to stop the trucks going past to ask them, where are they coming from and where are they going. So we needed this information in order to complete origin destination matrices. So just your normal mobility study. And since 2008, this is the last time that we've done mobility study on the road, stopping trucks like that in Estonia. And now we're using mobile phone data for monitoring human mobility. So Positium is a company that produces methodology and technology to do that. And what do I mean about when I talk about mobile positioning data? So as you all know, you all have mobile phones, and many of you actually connect to this webinar through a mobile phone. And these devices, whether they're smartphones or feature phones, it doesn't matter when they're used, they connect to the cell tower of the mobile network operator. And these become kind of geographical footprints. And they are stored in databases, data about all of you. And this data can be taken, processed, and used to produce collective anonymous statistics. So things like location and movement flows of people, of both residents and visitors. And this is the idea. We can use this data to actually create better decisions, have insights about the population and the visitors. And this is information that the decision makers can use to make decisions based on real data. So mobile phones become kind of sensors of the society, and there's a variety of ways we can use this data. But so just to be clear, we're not talking about data that is collected through mobile phones, through an app or any other way. We're not talking about that. Here at the webinar, we're talking about data that is actually stored at the mobile phone operator already, and it's passively collected about each and every one of you as you use your mobile phone. Okay, so how can we use this data, and what's this data about? Well, so the one of the first things that we did was to understand where people live and work. And if you know where people live at a very good level, so with a very good accuracy, and to check that, and you know where people work, you can start making these commuting matrices, so origin destination matrices of commuting flows. And that's what we did. And in a couple of years later, this was a project done in 2016. We actually went back to 2011, and Statistics Estonia compared our commuting flows from mobile phone data to the commuting flows they gathered from the Estonian population and housing census of 2011. And they found a very good correlation between the flows. So the PSNR was 0.89. The real difference, as you see here on the slide as well, where the census data is a bit less dense. So the difference is in the density of the data. So mobile positioning data flows actually show more of these commuting flows, and especially between smaller areas. There are various reasons why this is the case, but we believe that this is actually quite correct. And Paul, if you go on, and how we use this data is in Estonia we had something called administrative reform. And maybe some of you can relate to that. We had over 200 municipalities in Estonia, which for a small country of 1 million people, it's too much, you know. It took many years for this administrative reform to happen, but one of the underlying data sources was the commuting flows from mobile position data, and they used the housing census commuting flows as well to detect what regions are actually functionally connected. So which are the regions that are connected through commuting flows, so that you draw the lines on how people actually go about their daily lives. So you don't split people's home and work and put them in different municipalities where you have different support structure. So this is a project with the Estonian Ministry of Regional Development. So that's the national level. Now, just recently, we looked at mobility data in Tartu. So we've done this in a couple of different projects, but maybe it's interesting to show that a city of just 100,000 people, and with the extent of big data available, we could distinguish 6 million different combinations of movements, so different origin destination matrices of people in Tartu. And how did we use this information? Oh, so Tartu was actually thinking about revamping their public transportation network, which was 20 years old and just marginally improving. So we took a very data-driven approach to the city of Tartu. We mapped out different data sources that we could use, and this mobility data from mobile positioning was one of the key resources, because this gave the demand for mobility. And then we had bus check-in data on what's the current how the current demand is met, and various other data sources like the schools and the hospitals and the kindergartens, different public locations, the road network, current and future land use, and so on and so on. Altogether 21 different data sources, data layers, we put them together, and because it was a very data-driven approach, within just 1 year, we could map out this new bus line network for the city of Tartu. Then we had a consultative approach where we asked the people what do they think, and it actually led to some new insights. So all in all, it took 1.5 years from starting the data collection to starting the new bus line network. And in July 2019, So this is the official map. This is actually running, and I can see it from my window right now. And another way to use this data is, of course, mobility can give you other insights which can be used for maybe a benefit that you might not even think about. And this is a project with GSMA, World Health Organization, and International Telecom Union of the UN, and cooperating with Airtel in India. So we mapped out the mobility in India of Uttar Pradesh, which in itself has over 200 million people living there. So the mobility data became the underlying data source for how people move about. And we connected this to tuberculosis surveillance data. So the idea is that is actually the commuting movements or how regions are connected is actually a better predictor of disease spreading, especially in terms of tuberculosis, than just geographical proximity. And this data can be used for effective vaccination planning. So, all in all, I would like to say that MPD can provide a very good broad spectrum analysis of human mobility. It's not easy to analyze mobile phone data, but once you have your methods in place and that data comes out is very good quality, you can use the same data source for a vast array of projects on a national or local scale. And this data source is not a silver bullet. It does not exist in a vacuum. No single data source alone could fill the data gaps that we have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. That was very interesting. So now we will go to our second presenter, Titi Kanti Lestari, who is the Director of Finance, Information Technology, and Tourism Statistics at BPS Statistics Indonesia. She is responsible for managing data collection, processing, and analysis of finance, information technology, and tourism statistics at the company. BPS Statistics Indonesia has been using mobile phone data to capture inbound tourism since 2016. Titi, over to you.
Hello. Good evening. It's evening in Jakarta now. Thank you. I will start next call. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Actually, in Indonesia, we have kind of like set a target for SDGs. Actually, all the indicators already put the baseline and scenario planning by Ministry of Planning. And in my area, there are at least 3 of indicators, 4 actually. Indicators goals 8, 12, and 14. And there is a data gap in terms of coverage, like especially for tourism in the border area. There is some area that there is no immigration checkpoints, and previously we did some kind of survey which IMF called sectoral survey or cross-border survey. And also in terms of granularity, because we didn't have subnational data for the accurate subnational data for inbound tourism, and for domestic we didn't have until municipality or regency area. So we use mobile positioning data to capture inbound, domestic, and outbound tourists. Yes, next poll. Thank you. Now, yes. So for inbound tourism, mobile positioning data is used since October 2016. So it is to increase the coverage and timeliness, because like in the past, sometimes in the survey we get the data quite late, like 1 month or 2 months late because of the remote area. So it is not good for analysis and for decision making. Also, in terms of coverage, the survey only covered 7 gates, or sometimes only the last time is only 16 gates at the border. So we implement the mobile positioning data where there is no immigration checkpoint. So, and then we integrate it with the other data source, the immigration data. Then actually implementing mobile is not easy because we need some kind of like quality assurance from the data. It's just like when we are doing a survey, we have gate first that's monitoring quality in the field, and then monitoring quality in data processing, and quality in the final result. And also we need a gate methodology. Actually, we kind of get help from position in that area for inbound tourism and for domestic, and also for outbound. Next poll. Thank you. Okay. So for domestic tourism, previously we did a household survey, and because of the small sample size, we only get estimates up to provincial level. But regency or municipality, they need more small level. Actually, they need the data up to sub-district level for decision making, and also because they have a kind of like target for the SDGs, so they have to make decision with area or with or something like that. And also it increase the frequency and timeliness, because when we did the survey, the result will be like maybe 6 months later that we got the data, and sometimes nearly 1 year. Then in the domestic tourism, we combine NPD with digital survey to get other data like purpose of visit, expenditure, because this data is needed for the tourism satellite account. Then also for SDGs 8.92 and 8.91 indicators. Before mobile positioning data, we published the data on only 34 provinces from 50,000 household samples, and it needs 8,000 enumerators. Then using mobile positioning data, we will publish if that hopefully we can publish like 500 regency and cities, and from 140 million subscribers with home detection, and we only use 8 data scientists to process the data. Yes, next poll. And for outbound, we will combine the immigration data with ongoing data, because from the immigration data we didn't know where they go. Only know they go overseas, but we didn't know where they come from, and then where they go, the countries. So where they come from is need for economic analysis, because this we can like track, because usually people that go overseas have mid and high income. Yeah. Then so to complement immigration, and we can know what country they visit, and we also combine with digital survey to scale, expenditure, and other characteristics. Before mobile positioning data, the outbound survey is 2013. That was quite old, actually. So with mobile positioning data, we can publish the data monthly with partner countries. That's our hope. Yes. That's all my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cici. So now I'd like to present our third speaker. His name is Emmanuel Letouvé, and he's the director of DataPop Alliance, a nonprofit think and do coalition on data, AI, and development created in 2013 by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, MIT Media Lab, and Overseas Development Institute, joined by Flowminder in 2016. He's the co-founder and serves as program director of the Open Algorithms Project. And he wrote the UN Global Council's white paper, Big Data for Development, in 2011, and has since then focused on the applications and implications of new data and technology for official statistics, governance, poverty and inequality, resilience, as well as ethics and privacy. Emmanuel, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon or evening to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and to present. So essentially, I will focus on this project, as Masha mentioned, the Open Algorithms project, so OPAL, which was co-founded by DataPop Alliance. And so the main goal of OPAL is indeed to sort of develop, deploy, test technology and governance standards for leveraging, so both sharing and using, so those private sector data that we have talked about so far, so pretty sensitive data from a privacy standpoint for human development, and to try and do so at scale systematically. So indeed, so next slide, please. So indeed, the starting question was, and it's been going on for about 10 years, was and has been, how can we as societies, national security offices, researchers, governments, civil society organizations, and so on, access, analyze those sensitive data, so the data that have been called digital breadcrumbs, so our digital footprints. And so there has been a lot of work in this space for the past 10 years. You can refer to that article that a group of us published in Nature Scientific Data about a year ago about the different data sharing models. And so you see on the right-hand side also the different taxonomy types of access. So when Seemed gave his presentation, they're basically using one such data sharing model, and there are others. And so OPAL, I think, sits, as I will describe, sits squarely in this sort of upper right corner, because we think, or we try and make it both more scalable and more secure, so safer from a privacy standpoint than other models. And so things that we thought were safe about 10 years ago, like anonymizing data, were actually found not to be very safe over the years. So a lot has changed over the past decade of the data revolution. And so one other aspect, so next slide please, one other aspect is that it's not just about sharing data or computing indicators. If they're not put to use, if they don't change anything, if they don't change decisions, if they don't change behavior, then they don't matter. So I also do political or cartooning, let's say in my pastime, or and so I did this cartoon on the left-hand side, sort of during the recent meeting of Eurostat in Brussels, and hopefully self-explanatory is that, for all the talk about the data revolution, and now we can see and understand human ecosystems at very fine levels of granularity, temporal, geographic, complex systems, and so on. We can measure poverty almost in real time and so on and so forth. If it doesn't change anything, then it doesn't matter. So one of the main questions and objective of OPAL and the work of DataPop in general is how to make data matter. And indeed, if you look on the right-hand side, it's complicated. So we can say, well, we're going to be able to measure the SDGs, but again, if it doesn't lead to any change, it doesn't matter. And if you look historically, cross-cutting analysis of the relationship between the quality of statistics and level of development, of course, overall you find a positive correlation. But first of all, it's very diverse, it's very spread, it's very scattered for different reasons. And second of all, there may be a lot of endogeneity there, meaning that we're not sure it's a causal relationship. And the fact is, we know that it's very, like, facts don't change our minds. And so you can tell someone climate change is real. If they don't want to believe in it, then you're not going to convince them. So we've been thinking about those questions of causality, how to make data matter for quite a bit. And so with Sandy Pantman at MIT, we wrote this article last year about, like, this vision of a human artificial intelligence. So it's pretty hard to explain, but in maybe 15 seconds, the vision of a human artificial intelligence is not just about using AI in a nice way or being careful about AI. It's a vision where we would use the principles of AI. So the fact that those artificial intelligence systems learn from data, they learn and they correct their behavior through data, through feedback loops. So that's what is called machine learning. And so what about if we were better at learning as societies through data, so through feedback loops? And so, for instance, we would stop hitting kids, not just because we're nice, but because we find out that it leads to very bad outcomes. And so it's this vision that we're trying to put forth and test with OPAL. And so next slide. So the way OPAL works is that it's a question. So it's really about trying to develop and test those human AI, privacy-preserving and participatory technology and governance standards. So the way OPAL works is that if you want to measure some SDGs and you think that there are insights in cell phone data, so we work with telecom providers in Colombia and Senegal, then you want to be able to access them systematically and so on. So what we do is that we install a server and a software that we deploy on the premises, so behind the firewalls of the companies, so Orange, Sonatel in Senegal, and Telefonica in Colombia, and we run those open algorithms. So there are questions on not only pseudonymized but aggregated data, so cold detailed records, CDRs, and what the accredited users only receive are the results. And so this is, let's say, the technology part of OPAL. It is about creating sort of like feedback loop, and then this can feed into lots of use cases about mobility, about poverty analysis, about literacy, and so forth. There's also a governance aspect to it, which is that we're trying to set up new governance standards. So concretely, we're putting together these codes, which is an acronym for Council for the Orientation of Development and Ethics locally, where local stakeholders, NSO, like faculty, university, but also people from civil society organizations can actually weigh in on the use cases on the open algorithms. And so we're trying to tackle both hurdles, so the technology, but also the governance and participation. And then, so OPAL started, and we'll be done in 1 minute. So OPAL started, so next slide. So OPAL started in Senegal and Colombia. We can get to that in the questions and answers because we had some prior connections. So the question often is, why would Telefonica or Orange Sonatel participate in that? So what are their incentives? So I can answer that question in the Q&A session. But so we've been really working for the past 2 years now in sequence. So we're finishing the pilot phase. So we have a functioning platform that is able to compute and provide population density, calibrated population density estimations in Senegal in particular. And we've also worked on the governance track through trainings, through user needs assessment, through the code. And we're now entering the next phase where we're hoping to expand to new industries and to new geographies and to build this, what we call OPAL in a box, such that it can be replicated and also be used in other industries besides telcos. And then I believe the next slide is the last slide. So the key message here is that we've been trying for the past decade of trying to put together systems and different modalities of access. So the two things that I think are key are, and that I'm hoping to leave you with, is that we need to industrialize this. We need to put in place standards to do this safely at scale and ethically. I think the time of pilots is done. There are still needs for some pilots in some cases, but overall we need to have these systematic systems and standards to make sure that data really matters for human development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Very interesting. So now we're going to go to the next segment of the webinar, where we're going to take I'm going to pose a few questions to the presenters that were selected from the people who registered for the event. So this question, so there's 4 questions, and if each speaker that is assigned these questions could maybe answer in 1 or 2 minutes in the interest of time. So the first question is for all 3 presenters. What kind of arrangements or agreements are required to access mobile data from telecom providers? So if any of the 3 speakers, how about Emmanuel, we start with you?
So if I don't know if we can go back to the slide, but in any case, so we described, or we tried to describe and discuss the different models in the Nature paper that I mentioned. So just to give some examples, you can, data challenges were the first large-scale ways in which those kinds of data were shared. So by data challenges, that refers to the challenges that Orange organized, for instance, between 2012 and 14 in Ivory Coast and then Senegal. So where data are packaged, prepared, some teams can then access them under NDA, so non-disclosure agreements and contracts. So that's one modality, and other companies like Telefonica, like BBVA have also done that. Another way is through contracts, where you're a team and you just approach a company and then you get a contract. Sometimes you pay for it, sometimes it's for free, depending on the case, the use case, etc. And so it's pretty safe, but it's not very scalable. And then so another way, which is, let's say, the OPAL way, is remote access, so question and answer mechanisms through a platform. So OPAL is one example. FlowMinder's FlowKit is another example of those, let's say, API-based ways to access data. And then over that, increasingly you have reflections about data collaboratives or data cooperatives, but these are not really technical ways of accessing the data. These are more political, kind of philosophical approaches, and you still need to actually have a technology and standards and systems to actually share the data. There's a whole range of ways. But I think more and more, as I said, and I will stop there, I think we need to think about what is the safest and the more scalable way to actually share and use those kinds of sensitive data.
Thank you very much. Kiki, what about you?
So we have MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with telco. Actually the biggest telco market share in Indonesia, and then also with a contract because we did a digital survey as well. So and then data connection because our data scientists go to the telco to do sandbox there. That's all. Thank you.
And Sim?
Yeah, so over the years, as Mona said, different modalities have been tried and tested. For an NSO that might not have the experience, then probably the best way to do this is through a platform that has already been set up, like OPAL or FlowKit or our own platform. But if we talk about the legal ways of accessing data, I think NSOs are in a good position that they might not recognize, or they haven't really thought through in a country. NSOs are usually the ones that are allowed to access privacy-sensitive data. And for example, in Europe, the GDPR allows NSOs, or for statistical purposes, even sensitive data to be accessed and used. Sometimes this doesn't really reflect in the telecom law, which is outdated and must be updated. So it counteracts the GDPR, but in essence, that it's a possibility. And we see in Indonesia that they actually have access to raw mobile phone data. And perhaps this is important for quality checking purposes, but I don't see a reason why everybody should have access to raw data all the time. Once it's been proven that it works, there is a platform where data goes through the quality assurance process and so on. But one more thing, there are a lot of international organizations that have facilitated access to mobile phone data. For example, International Telecom Union is one. They did a project for ICT indicator measurement, how many people are using ICT in various countries, and UAE, Georgia, Kenya was one. I think Lena is even on the webinar from Kenya. And ITU was able to access mobile phone data in 5 countries out of 5 that they tried. So another example is maybe GSMA, which is an operator organization, and they have the state data for social goods project where companies have actually signed up to say that yes, they can provide aggregated anonymized data for social good projects if it's necessary, if it's critical, and if there's a good methodology or a way to provide the data without sharing any privacy sensitive information. So the methods should be agreed upfront.
Right. Thanks very much, Tim. So speaking of quality assurance, this question is for you and Kiki. How do we ensure that data generated using mobile technologies conforms to data quality standards needed in official statistics? So maybe, Tim, you can answer that, and then Kiki?
Okay, so when we think about data quality, sometimes we just think of the output data. So we have, NSO does a project with mobile phone data. They propose a method to the operator, and then looks at the output data quality. But if it's garbage that goes in, or it's not properly understood what goes in, then garbage comes out, right? In Positium, we look at data from many different perspectives, and one of the most important perspectives is on the input data quality. And there we have, different aspects that we have to look at. What is actually the nature of the data that's going in, how representative is it to the total population in different, is it geographically, user-wise, time-wise, and so on, fully representative, so that there are no gaps in the data. And then there are more specific questions relating to what you want to do with the data. And this leads into the question of how to produce the methodology, because even though the data is the same all across the world, in principle, in practice, details matter very much, and the methodologies always need to be adapted. So this how to implement the methodology, what kind of methodology adjustment is needed, is the second step in quality assurance. And then once those steps are clear, output data quality assurance actually should follow, and the results should be okay.
Great, thank you. Titi, what about you?
Handbook, which follow the 12F published by UN, but that's only for survey, census, and administrative data. But for mobile positioning data, we also refer to that. So there is dimension in the TIF, 7 dimensions, including selectivity, accuracy, I forgot, I don't remember all. Yeah, and then as Jim mentioned before, the important thing is the raw data. I mean the data that come in, like the raw data. It is actually the same with the census or survey or admin data. We have to kind of like check the accuracy and the selectivity, something like that. Check all the data, whether the data needs imputation, and check the skewness, something like that. So check in the data that come in. And then also for the final data, there is actually position with us. We did some kind of like calibration with other data, confirm with other data like immigration data, survey data, or other data that we have. That's so that we sure that our data is in good quality after we look at that all. Actually, it's the same principle with the survey and census that we did. But for the mobile positioning data, the data is already there. Like if there is a missing data, whether we have to delete or we have to impute the data, something like that. Yeah.
Thanks very much. You wanted to add something?
Quickly. So indeed, this question of the quality of big data, the reliability, has been raised for almost like most of the past 10 years. And so I remember almost 10 years ago, I presented on big data for official statistics at the World Statistical Congress in Hong Kong in 2012. And at the time, there was a lot of resistance on the part of official statisticians and NSOs in the room, saying that these are like biased data. What can we find from Facebook or Twitter? And not everybody has a cell phone, etc. So we've gone a long way since. I mean, we all understand statistical biases. There have been like new methods that have been developed to correct for those biases. But I think more fundamentally, I think as I said then, and I still think now, it's not really a technical question. It's more of a political question. Because if we want to have data or statistics that we all believe, that we all trust, then the national offices have to be part of those discussions and those projects. That's why OPAL, but also Data Hub and a lot of others are working with national offices, because big data is not there to replace official statistics. So those are, and they're not really complementary. I think it's the wrong way of phrasing it. Is big data are going to be inputs into official statistical production processes. And that has to be done well, that has to be done safely, that has to be done in ways that respect the fundamental principle of official statistics, the fifth of which actually allows for any data to be used as an input. So there is not a big difference, like a qualitative difference between big data and official statistics. Official statistics is the output that are produced by official statistical systems. And so all of those projects like calibration, quality, trust are critical, because if we have two inflation figures or two poverty figures flying around, then we can't have a democratic discussion about the state of affairs, what works, what doesn't work, and what should be done.
Thank you. Actually, let's just stick with you for a second for the next question, if you don't mind. The question is, how do we encourage telcos to provide anonymized data for public goods?
Sure. So this is a $1,500 billion question. I don't know exactly how much, but it's a question that I alluded to in the presentation. So why would companies do that? What can be done? How can they be incentivized? Should they be compelled to actually share this data? What do we mean by sharing, etc.? So just a few thoughts. So first, it's important to realize that those big companies are not monolithic. So So from afar, they look like one big company. You see Vodafone, you see Orange, you see Telefonica, you see Telenor, you see lots of, but actually they're more like schools of fish. They look from afar as one, but there are actually many, just like the UN, just like any big organization. And so what that means is that you have different groups and people within that, and they don't all agree. At some point, the fish or the school of fish is going to go in one direction, and you don't really know why. And so this is like a complex system, and something emerges. What that means is that there are different incentives, different reasons why within the companies they may want to do that. So it's quite political actually to get them to do that, and you have to talk to the right people and sort of trigger the right different incentives. I think there are like 6 or 7 classes of incentives. I'll go over them in 10 seconds each, or 5. One is, I think there is a genuine interest amongst those companies from some people to actually sort of like do good, contribute, because they're not just staff or employees, they're also citizens, people, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and they're humans. So some of them actually want to do good. Another reason is there's a brand reason, of course. I mean, it's nice to have your logo at the WEF or the UN World Data Forum, or so it's a CSR, corporate social responsibility argument, or brand argument. That's pretty powerful. Another one is also an ecosystems argument. It gets you closer to the National Secretary Office, to the presidency in some countries. You're sort of part of the ecosystem, you're part of the discussion, so that's also important it's a social capital argument. The fourth one is commercial. In some cases, those companies actually charge, and they're thinking of business models, and they're thinking of how can we get our foot in the door, develop the capacities, the systems to actually make money off that. Another is also to increase market potential. So it's not just CSR, it's not just commercial, but they say, well, if we can avoid the next civil war, or if we can grow the GDP by 0.001 percentage point, then it will help overall. The sixth and second to last, which is quite interesting, is that there is an internal argument that you can also sell, which is it's going to allow your staff to work on interesting projects. You're going to build internal capacities. You're going to change your data culture. So I think this is also an argument in countries where you have a big brain drain. And it's hard to retain data scientists, and some companies are interested in working on those projects. So I think I'll stop there. The last question is about regulation. Should they be compelled? I think they should be incentivized, including fiscally. There can be and there should be regulation to both enable and protect the data. The GDPR is very, very strong on consent and control of data subjects, but I don't think they should be compelled by law. The GDPR indeed has some clauses about public interest, but it doesn't mean, or it shouldn't mean that an NSO can just say you have to give me all your data, especially raw data. So it's really a partnership kind of vision that I think should be conveyed.
Thank you very much. That's a lot of things to think about. On this same topic, I'd like to ask maybe one final question for our 2 other speakers. So, Team TT and Sim. So, do you have difficulties in obtaining data from the telcos, and how do you overcome and build those partnerships? Maybe TT, you can start, and then to Sim.
Especially, many hundreds of meetings, something like that, because actually we need maybe around 6 months before we get the data. And at first, we didn't get the raw data. We didn't get access to the raw data. That's the problem for official statistics, because we didn't know that if something happened, when we asked, they didn't know. They just answered that that's from the system, something like that. Then after that, we discussed, and then when they give us access to the raw data. actually it's not easy the first time, but then after we get their trust, then they easily easily like to give the data to us and then to cooperate. But now they understand how to work with statistics office. Before they didn't have kind of experience work with statistics because we are like maybe ask many questions and bothering them, pounding their door or something like that. And now after we get trust from one MNO, then another MNO now come approach us that to be involved. So after one, then that's how we will work with hopefully maybe next year, or we can work with at least 2 MNO or 3 in the future. Yeah. It's not easy actually, yes.
Thank you. So it seems like trust is a big ingredient there. How about you, Sir?
Yeah.
So since I know a bit about the Indonesian case, I should emphasize that the NSO has something to give as well. The NSO can provide a quality stamp on their data, on the telco data. So this actually opens up the commercial aspects of the data for them, because if it has been used and approved by the statistical office, there's no end to what they can do with the data commercially as well. And many of these telco operators actually want to develop a data business, but for one, they don't have skills to understand and develop data products based on their own data. And this is where the NSO can help as well, or mobile phone data projects. So it really helps if one, we give telcos an easy way to participate. You just provide the data. The project is strictly formulated. The ways of achieving the project goals are well defined. We know what to do. And we provide them a way to do good, contribute to statistics and data that actually leads to decisions. But this quality stamp on data is actually one of the most important aspects that BPS in Indonesia and statistical offices can provide. Working together with the statistical office does build trust in whatever clients they are going after the project with the statistical office, and actually provide them skills on how to analyze their own data, bring in the data science skills, and help them see the value in their data, and possibly in a way that can be used for other commercial projects. But I also agree with Manuel that any successful project probably has some kind of commercial aspect involved as well. So some money to pay for their expenses.
Thank you. Interesting. So it sounds like by working with them, you help them also expand their own horizons with the data. Okay. So now we're slowly reaching the end of this webinar. I'd like to give each of our speakers 1 to 2 minutes for their closing remarks, and maybe we can start with Sim. Over to you.
I guess I want to say that this data can be used in all countries of the world. It has been used in many countries already. Methods have been quite well developed. Actually, if you go online, Google Scholar, you look at articles by us, look at mobile positioning data, you can find plenty of articles in your field as well. And I think also statistical offices can lead the charge in using this data in different countries of the world. So if you are a member of the statistical office, statistical community, please do try. And if you want, I'll be glad to help.
Thank you. Titi?
There is a proverb, there is a will, there is a way. So if you will want to use mobile or big data, then there is a way. Although there is many hurdles and many difficulties. We believe that we can overcome the difficulties that are.
Very poetic, thank you. Emmanuel?
Yeah, so I think the final word will be that we have to be something like carefully bold or responsibly bold. Bold meaning that it's not just about filling data gaps or creating dashboards and having better measures. It's like we have to set ourselves the goal of either changing or improving the state of the world with data, technology, AI increasingly. And that is going to be pretty disruptive. And so there are lots of organizations that are neither ready nor willing, frankly, to actually embrace that change because they benefit from the status quo. And so that's one that I think we need a step change in how we make decisions and how we act, globally, but also individually. And that data can help. At the same time, carefully, because to be honest, there are lots of very genuine, legitimate concerns, worries about things like real-time, constant surveillance of populations. Things that we take for granted are seen or showed to be actually untrue a few months or weeks later, like, as I mentioned, anonymization. AI can be very destructive. Of course, it can be biased. It can lead to enhancing power imbalances rather than shrinking them. And so there are lots of things, if we're humble, there are lots of things that we don't really know. So it doesn't mean let's not do anything, but it means being careful. It means working in partnerships. It means looking at what academia and research is producing to make sure that we don't look back in a generation and neither have missed the opportunity nor have allowed data, technology, AI to actually play a greater role in ways that would have been very detrimental for the vast majority of humans.
Thank you. So yeah, commitment to improving state of the world, but being cautious and humble. That's something we can maybe all think about for the next, at least forever, maybe.
20 years.
So I'd like to once again thank all our speakers and participants who've joined us in this webinar. I'd also like to thank the UN Statistics Division for organizing and engaging all of us in this webinar, including Fariel Ahmed, Linda Hooper, Paul Pacheco, and Francesca Perucci. So to stay informed about upcoming webinars and other UN World Data Forum news, visit unstats.un.org. There you have all the details. And you can also stay connected on Twitter via @UN_Data_Forum and share your views using the hashtag UN Data Forum. Thank you, and until next time.